Saludos and salutations, Broncos Country, and welcome to another exciting episode of Broncos Talk. Today, we are going to talk about the exciting adventure that the Broncos are on, going straight into the playoffs. I know we haven't been here the last 2 weeks, but unfortunately, holidays, family, and all that stuff. Hey, some time off is always needed. But thank God, Happy New Year to all you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us and being here with us today. But ladies and gentlemen, and in case you have not felt it or seen it, Broncos Country is alive because for the first time in 9 freaking years, the Broncos are finally going to the playoffs. So please make sure you sit still, get your beer, your drink, whatever it is, make yourself comfortable because here we go. And welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Diaz, and I am your host and the owner of Broncos Talk. And joining me to my right is my good friend, Bronco Libre. Bronco, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great, my brother. Happy New Year, as we talked about earlier, to Ahir and Libre and everybody in Broncos Country. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We do apologize for not being here the last 2 weeks, but again, the holidays, man. What are you going to do, right?
Exactly. Happy New Year, everyone. Let's go.
Yeah. Happy New Year. But ladies and gentlemen, Bronco Libre and I have so much to talk about. Everything we've missed out in the last 2 weeks, what's going on right now during Broncos Country, and what is to be expected this coming weekend, coming into Super Wild Card Weekend. But before we get with anything through, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are joining us here, or for those of you that are veterans of the show, got to get some stuff out of the way. So please bear with me. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Orange and Blue Network that Broncos Talk is being you're watching on. So please make sure you subscribe, share, comment, and like on all of their favorite shows, your favorite shows, I should say. We have something for everybody here. But also, ladies and gentlemen, this is a simulcast, which means we are not only just on the Orange and Blue Network, but also on MHRT Network. So please make sure you subscribe, share, comment, and like on any and all of their videos, especially whatever it is that you like on there that tickles your fancy. I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, there is something for everybody. I know I keep saying that, but I can't stress that enough. But please make sure you show your support because it is very, very greatly appreciated. For any business inquiries, you can email at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. If you'd like to hit us up on Twitter, here are our Twitter handles at the bottom. Mine is at 6'10" Mexican. Bronco Libre's is at Bronco Libre 5280. For those of you listening to us on audio after the fact, we ask that you please 5-star rate, hit that live notification button so you get the up-to-date episodes as soon as they hit wherever it is you are watching us or listening to us, I should say, on podcast after the fact. Just so you guys know, we are streaming on YouTube and Twitch. I think we're still on, and there's a couple of other ones that we are not currently streaming on, just for the simple fact that there's been a lot of changes going into the new year. So please make sure you go to the Orange and Blue YouTube channel and MHRT YouTube channels to make sure get your information on where we are streaming from and where you can watch it. But more than anything, youtube.com is where you can find us. Also, want to give a shout out to our sponsor for today's show, which is Dubby. Ladies and gentlemen, Dubby, as soon as I can put it on here, Dubby is here for you. Now, while you're asking yourself, what is Dubby? Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you. Dubby is formulated to give you focus and energy with no jitters or crash. Their formula contains vitamins, amino acids, and nootropics, including the patented neurofactor formula. Now, the great thing about it is it has no calories, no sugar, no maltodextrin, no fillers, and no artificial colors. Ladies and gentlemen, it's basically all of the good stuff without all of the bad. Now, I know you guys are used to your coffee and your energy drinks, just like me. And you've heard it from 100, if not 1,000 people telling you that, you shouldn't drink all that stuff, especially even if it's in moderation. However, when you need the boost, the energy, you need to just get through the day, whether it's for work or dealing with, any social activities, whatever needs you need the energy for, W is there for you. And just to let you guys give you a boost on that, our good friends over at Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue are giving you a 10% off at checkout. So when you pick your favorite flavor, any of the ones you see on the screen, make sure you use the code NRWOB10 for 10% off on any of your favorite flavors at checkout. Shout out to Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue for the 10% off, and make sure you guys go and get your W today. It is the drink of champions, the choice of champions. Well, I'm telling you, Libre, I'm getting better at it every single stream, but I feel like I kind of fell off not being here the last 2 weeks in terms of getting all of that stuff done and saying it correctly. But Libre, I know before the last time, the end of the year, we did talk about the unfortunate end that was the Chargers game, and he missed out on the Bengals game. And then the destruction of the backups for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I don't know where it is you want to begin first, but I'm going to start off with, just kind of play catch up to where we are currently, which is just the Bengals. And what I mean by catch up here, Libre, is just kind of like there's been a lot of talk where people are trying to feel some sort of empathy for Cincinnati for missing out on the playoffs. And to that, my counterpoint to that, and I've been saying it to every single person that's asked me this week, is where was that empathy for the Broncos when they lost last year to New England? Right. There was no empathy for us whatsoever from anybody outside of Broncos country. We all just kind of got the same, hey, you should have won. Russell Wilson's the problem. We just got attacked from all angles. And me personally, I was destroyed. I was distraught. I was everything. And they were right. And yes, the Broncos were in that same situation where they needed such and such and such and such thing to happen, just like the Bengals were, even though we knew deep down it wasn't going to happen, and it didn't. So fast forward 1 year later, the Bengals go on a tear. They do what they have to do at the end of the season, but unfortunately, it's not enough. So before I hand it over to you, Libre, on your thoughts about it, I just want you to know that I feel no empathy for Cincinnati. I've been making fun of the Bengals since that happened, just for the simple fact that we got an earful from Bengals fans at the end of that crazy, crazy game. And just for me, hey, there was somebody on TikTok that said that they feel that the Bengals are wasting Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on the Bengals and not getting them a ring before they finally start nosediving. Maybe sooner than later, according to them.
No, I agree. And I say to the Bengals, do your job. Like, really, do your job. You guys didn't do it during the regular season, and we're waiting there at the end, and you needed so much help there at the end just to even get in, where you're relying on other teams to lose to get in, which if you're not going to do your job and you have to rely on other teams to do certain things, you can just forget it. Like, it doesn't happen. It's very rare that scenarios like that will help a team get in, or like I like to say, back into the playoffs like that.
I so heartily agree. Like, there is no empathy for Cincinnati. Like, hey, congratulations. You went on a 5-win tear, and Joe Burrow has set the record, I think, for most passes or in a season, or he broke some type of record. Jamar Chase, a Triple Crown winner. All that good stuff, all those great accolades. But again, just like I told almost every Bengals fan I saw after that game, especially some at the event I was at that Saturday night, who were, just kind of already singing their praises and thanking the Lord and all that good stuff. Like, hey, man, you guys may have won the battle, but you're not going to win the war.
The war, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And everybody's saying, especially Chiefs fans, because I've also had this conversation with them, that the Chiefs were doing it so they wouldn't have to face the Bengals. Right now, the Chiefs have so many bigger problems on their hands. The Bengals are the least of it, okay? Because, and we're not even. I'm not even going to really relegate as to what happened this past weekend with the backups. Although I will say, Libre, that Kansas City should really be worried because that's the exact same team that's coming to Kansas City the day Patrick Mahomes and every single player they have currently leaves Kansas City or Andy Reid leaves. What you guys saw is exactly what's going to happen. It happens with every single championship franchise. And if you don't believe me, go look at New England and where they are at right now, especially after Tom Brady left.
No, I agree with that 100%. And the way I look at it is, excuse me, it could still be their second team, third team, doesn't matter what it is. Sorry. They're still NFL players. They are getting paid to do the job. And you also have to look at it. A lot of the players, there's still a lot of starters that were in that game. They just had the main key guys like Mahomes, Kelsey, Chris, so there's still major starters that are in there that still got burnt. They got 0 points. 0 points. That's all I have to say. 38-0.
Yeah. And before we continue, let's say hello to some of the people here in the chat. Johnny the Boss Baki saying, happy birthday, you ridiculously tall bastard.
Happy birthday, brother. Yeah.
Thank you so much. For those of you that don't know, I turned 40 years old today, guys. Like
Viejo.
I was exactly viejo. Is like I can't put it any other way. I was just basically I still feel like I was just plugging in, putting the fresh new batteries on my Walkman on my way to school. It seems like it was just yesterday, man. But I'm so glad to have been able to say I lived to see 40. I hope to live to see many, many more. But I want to shout out everybody that gave me a shout out all day. Libre, of course, yourself, the Boss Baki, all my friends and family. We had a little party just before we went live. That's why we're a half hour late. So I do apologize about that. D-Rock saying, hey, Don and Bronco Libre. What's going on, D-Rock?
What's up?
My high salute to you, brother. Thank you so much for joining us and for showing your support. D-Rock also jumps in and saying, I don't care what no one says. Denver versus Cincy game was awesome because when was the last time we fought back to have a chance to win? Like, I can't even, I'm not even going to lie to you, D-Rock. I was watching this game. I even uploaded a clip of me in the car with my family because we were waiting. We were early to our event and we were just waiting. And like, if you would have owned, I know the video doesn't really show it, but the amount of noise we made in that car was just fantastic when we saw Bo Nix throw that just massive, incredible pass to Marvin Mims. And then I thought the game was over, and my sister was just putting on the game behind me while we were at a store buying something. And she was like, oh, you're not going to believe this. And she showed it to me, and I damn near jumped up because I couldn't believe that second catch. I mean, it felt something like out of a Madden game, which I guess since we're on the topic here, Libre, would you have gone for the 2-point for the win? Or would you have done what Sean Payton did and go for the field goal?
So my logic of thinking, especially with that, is that if you are at home, you go for the extra point and go for the tie. If you're on the road, go for the 2 points. Like that's, I think, one thing is always going to be a debatable thing. That's what we could say here in the stands, say at home and all that. That's an easy decision. What we say, go for 2, go for 2. I know that it's a lot harder decision, especially me coaching little league, like 8th graders and all that, and having that type of scenario come up as well. Like you're in the moment. They have more invested into. They have more emotions into that game and logic of thinking. But I feel like we should have gone for 2, and I think if we should have gone for that 2-point conversion, I think we could have gotten it.
Thank you so much, D-Rock. You know what? To be honest with you, Libre, I don't think there's a right answer. That's been my whole thing. There is no right answer and the reason I say that is because if it goes either way south for the Broncos, we're going to do the exact same thing. And we're going to sit here and argue about the counterpoint.
Oh, yeah.
The Broncos tied the game and they lost it. Everybody's saying they should have went for the 2 points. If the Broncos would have went for the 2 points and they didn't convert, then everybody would have said they should have tied the game and try to go into it in overtime. So you wouldn't have one without the other. Yep. Okay. Now, granted, giving Joe Burrow back the ball wasn't the right answer, but especially seeing Riley Moss was literally getting bullied at the point of attack all game. But you kind of have to put that trust where if you're going to go, you're going to go and you're going to try to take this team to the limit. Now, the Broncos had 2 chances to win that game, the offense, and they faltered. I mean, the Bengals kicker missing the field goal, and if that wasn't a bigger sign to go for me, I mean, going on 4th down, like sometimes I think I would have just went for it because I know punting that ball back to Joe Burrow, like there was not going to be a third luck charm. You know, you got lucky twice. And I knew there wasn't. I probably would have went for it on 4th because I'm like, he's going to march down and, you know, get the score anyway. But that's just me standing from where I was watching the game with my logic. But the fact that the Broncos took one of the better teams to the limit, Libre, is anything but fantastic, which, by the way, brings up another point, ladies and gentlemen, and that's just the credit that the Broncos have been getting all week long. Mm-hmm. And by credit, Libre, before I turn it over to you, is basically saying how the Broncos were only supposed to be another 5-win team with a rookie quarterback, with one of the biggest dead cap hits in the league with Russell Wilson, you know, his on his books. And this team went out there and just completely turned that around. Yes, there were some downfalls. There were some tough losses. But at the same time, they were big wins. They were winning streaks. And for the first time in 9 years, this team is going to the playoffs. So, Libre, what are your thoughts about the Broncos turning their season around for the better instead of going for what the people thought they'd be?
First, before I would go there, going back to the game, especially going into overtime, mm-hmm. like we stopped them. They punted the ball to us, and in overtime, one thing is how can you go 3 and out in the overtime as well? That's another hard thing as well, is I think what lost it for us right there. You can't go 3 and out when you have that opportunity that you just stopped them. Now you have that opportunity, no matter what score it is, if it's a field goal or a touchdown, the game is over at that point. But mm-hmm. then just to go 3 and out, that was the hard part. And I felt at that point, after we got that 3 and out, I was like, there's no way. I go, best case scenario at this time is a tie and we're in. But you know how Burrow is, you know how Jamar Chase was, Brown, you know, so like they just showed up on that second possession, that second opportunity that we gave them. And they took advantage of it and they got that touchdown for the win. So credit to them, you know, but again, it's something that we took over and especially versus KC to do that. But to answer your question about the season and the narrative that the Broncos had, yeah, that's all you heard all season long, right before up to the season started. That's all you're hearing is that this is the worst offense that's in the league. You have a rookie quarterback. You have nobody there. So you guys are not, like even Vegas put it out there, 5.5 games. So everyone was on that already. So they're like, oh yeah, you guys are the worst. You're not going to do this. You have the rookie quarterback. They're not going to do anything with it. And one thing that I loved all year long with this team, even at the beginning of the season, people were asking me, hey, what do you feel like the Broncos are going to do? And I actually did predict 10-7. And a lot of people are like, oh, you're crazy. Look at you. You guys don't have enough for it. And I'm like, if you look at some of our games, some of those close games that we had, we could probably be like 12-5. You know, we could have been at that area, but you know, it just happens. One luck, a little bounce here, a bounce there, whatever could happen. But being able to have the Broncos do what they did this year, and that we're able to say, you know what, this is a young team. You're going to be scared of us going in the future. 2-3 years down the road, we're going to be right there with the talks of championship contentions as well, year after year, because of how young this team is and how and the continuity that they're going to have going forward. This is a dangerous team that a lot of teams are going to have. They're going to be fearing the Broncos real quick.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree with you better, my friend. Let's jump back into the comments here. The boss, Johnny Bucky, jumping back in saying he turns 36 on Saturday. The Broncos gave us a huge birthday gift to Don in the form of a playoff game. Happy early birthday to you, boss, on Saturday. I'm pretty sure you're all hyped up and ready. Yes. Just make sure that Chuck E. Cheese does the dance for you and that you get extra tokens, okay? Oh, man, I love telling that joke. Your cousin Juan Marquez saying, what's up, guys? First off, I don't want to hear anything about backups for the Chiefs. The Lions playing with 14 people on the defensive line and still play football. Secondly, I like our chances in Buffalo. Happy 40th. Well, thank you so much, Juan. But to answer your question, I'm with you on that. I don't want to hear any excuses. The only people that are making excuses are people in Cincinnati. Okay, yep. Let's just be honest with you. And they're making excuses because their biggest excuse is, oh, the Chiefs fear the Bengals. Well, not really, because they beat the Bengals. So how do you feel like that doesn't make any sense? Now, if you want to say a second round, they've played in the second round before, so I mean, there's so many ways you can go with that conversation, Libre, but at the end of the day, that's not the point. And you got to do what everybody's been saying. The Bengals lost to the Patriots at the very beginning of the year. They went into their casual 0-3, 0-4 that they've been doing, and they've been lucking out in the past couple seasons in terms of squeaking by into the playoffs. But aside from their last Super Bowl journey, they haven't really done anything in terms of fixing their defense, Libre, because that continues to be like the backbreaker of their team. And yeah, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase literally did their best carrying them through that 5-win streak, and some of those games just winning out of sheer luck. But at the same time, it's like you can't wait till the end, at the very end, to try to, be the best, and then get all disappointed and sad when you don't make it, when you should have been like that since the beginning, and vice versa, because there are teams that start off hot and then they just crap out. Same thing, same mentality. Like, you have to play consistent football for 18 weeks and not frown or point fingers at other people when it doesn't go your way. It's like, hey, you know what? We effed up. We got to get better. Let's see what we can do in the offseason. Simply said.
Exactly.
But moving on, D-Rock saying they should have went for the field goal, no question. Sean Payton made the right call, and he's saying in overtime, simply said, bad play calling and piss poor execution. I will agree with you on that there in that overtime game against the Bengals. If Bo Nix doesn't overthrow, who was that, Sutton or Mims?
Sutton.
Thank you, Sutton.
I think it was Sutton.
Yeah, we'd probably be having a whole different conversation today. But again, ladies and gentlemen, that goes back to just to show you how important the Broncos need to get a run game in next season, because as great as Bo Nix is and is going to be for the Broncos, every single drive can't be with Bo throwing the ball every time. You have to be able to run the ball. You have to be able to convince the defense to either choose. They're either going to stack the box or they're going to spread out. Just simply put, especially when the defense has been out there longer than you can, you just wear them the hell out with the running game. And that's something that has been non-existent really in Denver, because they don't fear Javonte Williams. Audric Estime has been really good, but he's not exactly somebody that you'd stack the entire box on to try to stop, And same thing with McLaughlin. McLaughlin's been good too, but at the same time, he's been more of a passing running back and more instead of a running. But when he runs, that man's got some speed. But at the same time, neither one of those three dudes are exactly world beaters. So that's exactly where the Broncos have to improve going into next season, just to kind of give Bo Nix some slack, and the Broncos offense being able to catch the defense sleeping. The boss jumping back in saying, Chuck E. Cheese, I am never ordering that stripper cake.
I tried telling you, don't cut the cheese.
Don't cut the big cake until you touch it and make sure it's an actual cake. That's all I'm going to say. Your cousin Juan jumping back in saying, what I love the most other than the win was the guys like Garrett and Cortland and how the team rallied around them to dominate the Chiefs. One thing one thing I'll say before I pass it over to you, Libre, is there was a comment that Garrett Bowles made about Jeff Saturday, who a couple shows ago on First Take, he expressed adamantly that I'm pretty sure with all of his heart, believed that the Bengals should have been in the playoffs and not the Broncos. And I think one of the reporters in the locker room asked him, like, hey, what do you think about Jeff Saturday's comments? And Garrett Bowles, with the most respect on earth, said Jeff Saturday can watch the Broncos play in the playoffs this coming week. What are your thoughts, Lieber?
You know what? I agree with him 100% wholeheartedly. And he can actually go and watch them with the Bengals. Go with the Bengals and go watch it with them. You know, because the Broncos are going to be in Buffalo this weekend, the early game on Sunday. You know, one thing that I have, like, because I watch Hard Knocks as well, and just watching the episode from last night of the Hard Knocks, you know, it started off, or it ended with the Bengals, all the Bengals players and the coach watching the Broncos, hoping that the Broncos would lose, and just watching their faces, seeing Marvin Mims score that first touchdown, which was phenomenal, and just seeing that you could see it in their eyes. They didn't have any emotions. They didn't show any actual true emotions like body movement or anything, but you saw it in their eyes, and they're like, you know what, this is it. This is not going to be good for us. And a little bit that made me kind of happy just watching that, just because they beat us in overtime, and I was like, how fitting is this, seeing this on Hard Knocks and seeing your guys' season end right there.
And you know what? Just to jump on that, like, I saw that clip literally about maybe an hour or so ago before they brought out my cake, and I was laughing so hard because the reason that made it so funny for me, Libre, is these men are sitting there, starters for Cincinnati, mind you, and in somewhere in their mind, they're thinking the team that took us to the limit is maybe they'll have a bad game against second and third stringers in Kansas City.
Yeah. And that's their hope. But again, you have to also think as well, as like, they're still professionals. They can go out there. It could be a potential trap game where the Broncos are going to be taking these guys lightly as well, you know, and you could see right away that the Broncos were not taking anybody lightly, and they were just gunning it, which was awesome.
For any one of those guys that thought that was going to happen, please tell them to contact me, because I have a bridge to sell them. I mean,
heck yeah.
It is, and it made my day too. It really did. Because you just saw, like, everything that they showed at the end of that game, especially Joe Burrow, who got super cocky at the end of that game with the sideline reporters. Yep. And the man acted like they were going to the Super Bowl. And that was starting to rub me the wrong way. I was expecting him to go out there and say, hey, we played a great team. It was a great game. Congratulations, you know, GG's. But it was just kind of like, well, yeah, you know, we're a great team and we're gonna be great and we're like, not even overlooking that there's a giant wish list of things that still need to happen for them before they can even speak in that demeanor, and just totally brushed it off, just like they totally brushed off the Broncos that game. And that's a huge sign of disrespect.
Oh yeah.
But hopefully the giant cake of humbleness that was delivered to Cincinnati, I hope they enjoy every single piece of it down to the last crumb, so they can understand where we in Broncos country were a year ago in terms of that exact same spot. And maybe they'll be in a better position to be more thoughtful going into next year, especially if they don't get to keep all their nice toys, you know, in terms of T Higgins. D-Rock jumping in here saying, I foresee Denver acquiring some top pieces this offseason because Denver has become a landing spot because of what we did on the field. But most importantly, Sean Payton helps his players get their incentives.
Yeah.
This is another topic I wanted to touch up with you, D-Rock, because this just wasn't the Broncos, but there were a lot of teams out there that were helping their players get their incentives to get their extra cash. You know, shout out to Tampa Bay with Mike Evans getting them that, you know, the yard record, and I think it was a couple $1 million, like 3.5, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a team like Dallas who benched Cooper Rush so he wouldn't get his extra $500,000 incentive, which was just downright disrespectful. It really was. And I'm telling you, that team will not see a Super Bowl. You can take that to the bank until Jerry Jones loses control of general manager duties. And bringing back Mike McCarthy is not going to do anything for everybody. Even if you bring Dak back, you're not going to worry about Zeke because you already cut Zeke, and Zeke is on the practice squad for the Chargers. So don't be surprised if you see him in a Charger playing for the Chargers this week, or if they make it any further. But it's terrible when you don't see teams or coaches just kind of get their players that extra incentive, gives them that extra motivation, especially when you're going into the playoffs. What are your thoughts, Libre?
No, I agree. And with Jerry Jones, I've said this. I have several friends that are Cowboys fans, and we've talked about this extensively. And they're right there as well. They're like, Jerry just needs to go away. It's really when he dies is when he's going to, the ownership changes itself. And that's what they're really waiting for now, because they understand that they're not going to go anywhere right now with him in charge, because he has too much control within that organization that he doesn't want to let the people he's hired to do their jobs, because he just wants his piece in there. Everything. I think just a couple of weeks ago, it was funny. Like, I think it was at the Philly game. I think he was on the sideline, and one of the Phillies fans was like, "Good job, Jerry. You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Keep on doing it." And it's like just mocking him in that video of him. He knows that that's what's happening, and he can't say really anything about it, which made it even so much better. And he's like, "Oh, thank you, which I just was laughing so hard when that happened. I was like, yes,
But and Johnny brings up, he literally read my mind. Can we talk about how the entire NFL is trying to poach our coaching staff, which is also another big point. And it's one of those things that happens, Libre, when your team, especially when they, start turning heads and making noise, is they become noticeable. So it's going to be up to the people in question to see if they want to go or if they want to stay and continue to be a part of something fantastic here in Denver, because nobody's forcing them out unless they get cut by Sean Payton. So the only one, and I told this to one of my best friends today, the only one I really hope doesn't happen is Vance Joseph going to the Bears as their head coach, because I told him, I said, dude, there are some people that are just meant to be really great offensive or defensive coordinators, and then there are just some that, when it comes to, especially if it's their first time, like if there's a team out there willing to give them a second chance, God bless them. But at the same time, it's like that you only get one.
I think we lost them there. But, I agree with it as well. Is if whenever you are doing well as a team, other teams are looking at your coordinators and all that as well. Right now, you could see on how well, especially how Vance Joseph, what he has done with this team, and really losing a key member of the defense as well with Alex Singleton, and what we were being able to do. Of course, other teams and other GMs are looking at him as like, we want you to lead our team. We're going to do that. I just remember when we hired Vance Joseph here the first time as our head coach, he didn't do well at all. It was pretty bad. Sometimes they say the second time go around is that you got that first taste. This is the first time you did the head coaching job. Okay, you got that over and done with. Now you know what you need to do the second time around. Yes, some have been able to do it. There's some that hasn't. And I feel like what you were just saying before you got cut off, I think Vance Joseph is so much better as a defensive coordinator than he is as the main guy. You are a defensive-minded coach. Just focus on that, and I hope that he makes the right decision. But if not, I wish him well wherever he might go, except if we happen to be playing you.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing about Vance Joseph is he reminds me a lot of that song by Mike Jones. I know I'm showing my age here. There was a lyric called "Back Then They Didn't Want Me, Now I'm Hot, They All On Me."
Yep.
So that's exactly where Vance Joseph is, because when he got cut by the Cardinals 2 years ago, he was just sitting out there. Like, he wasn't a hot commodity. It was bad where the Cardinals didn't even want him. And Sean Payton saw something in, because we all thought that he was going to go after Vic Fangio before he landed the job with the Dolphins. So, and it was kind of, and we were all talking about it, like it was going to be awkward, Vance Joseph back in Denver, but not as a head coach instead of a defensive coordinator. So, but I was like, hey, you know what? Stranger things in the NFL have happened, Libre. Like, you know what? Let's go for it. And then after that week 3 massacre against the Dolphins, we were already ready to ship Vance Joseph out, myself included, telling people, hey, don't even let him get on the plane. Let him find his own way back to Denver. Don't even let him come back into Denver. But I was
saying the same thing too. Yeah.
It was just something in that when they came to Chicago, when I was there, and you just saw the turn. I don't know if it was supposedly Sean Payton cutting his sleeves off. I don't know what happened during that week, but ever since that game, yes, there have been a couple of hiccups along the road, but the dominance that he has displayed with the weapons with the players he's had, and just the turnaround of the season that we've had is just beyond incredible. So it's no surprise that people were going to come knocking on Denver's door requesting an interview to get him. Now, I will say that with that going forward, if anybody does hire Vance Joseph to be their head coach, just remember, he doesn't come with Sean Payton.
No.
So he owes Sean Payton a huge amount of credit for sticking with him and not firing him after week 3 and letting him fix what needed to be fixed and everything. But again, for any one of those teams interviewing him for a head coaching position, I beg you to go look at our seasons with Vance Joseph as a head coach, because you could be walking into something that you may not be thinking you're getting. All right. I'm just going to leave it at that. But I know David Shaw has also been requested to be interviewed by the Saints. And as you guys know, none of these guys can be interviewed until the Broncos are either eliminated from the playoffs or if they just happen to win a Super Bowl going into the offseason. So none of that stuff can happen as long as they are in playoff contention. D-Rock also jumping in and saying, it's hella strange that the other teams are interviewing our coaches for head coaching spots, but our team is trash and our QB is quote unquote ass. Okay, right? We know we're the SHT. Yes, you're all right, D-Rock. It is great. Your cousin Juan also jumping in saying, let us not forget 63 sacks for this new look Orange Crush defense. So with that being said, I think that's a great transition into the part of the show where we talk about your background, which is the playoffs, something that the Broncos have not been able to do for the last 9 years. And I got to tell you, Libre, besides last year, the only other time that the Broncos barely missed out on the playoffs was 2016. And that's just because they were not able to replicate what they did the year before, but they were close. They had just lost Peyton Manning. Brock Osweiler had left because he thought he was the next big thing, and Houston shelled out a ton of money to earn his services, which I'm so glad Houston did. And, they saved John Elway from probably making a big mistake and not giving him more money. But at the same time, it's been just, besides then and last year, where we just finally got a sniff of where we could be or where this team was heading, and just being so close, but not being able to get over that, cross the line and into the threshold of the postseason. It just feels like a breath of fresh air. And it almost feels like uncharted territory, if I'm being honest with you, Libre, just for the simple fact that we've always been the ones that were just from the outside looking in, always already thinking about next season and training camp and the draft and, free agency, and not actually having to even give a crap about the current, the year wasn't the football year anyway, wasn't already over. So for these guys to go in there and, being a playoff team. Now, I will say that everybody outside of wearing orange and blue is writing this team off, basically saying that, they're not going to get past Buffalo. They're not going to win, yada, yada, yada. But let me just be the first one to tell you, Libre, before I turn it over to you, that this is the exact same conversation we had last year when the Broncos went to Buffalo for Monday Night Football, I believe. And it was the exact same conversation. Now, there have been some key differences from now and here then. Josh Allen doesn't have Stephon Diggs this year. Last year he did, and he was a key factor. And the wide receivers that the Buffalo has now are key factors as well, but none of them are exactly Stephon Diggs like in that same echelon. The one thing that does worry me about Buffalo is James Cook, because he is a really good running back, and if you give him an inch, he will take a mile. Libre, your thoughts?
I agree with that, with everything that you just said. I feel that going into this game this weekend does have a lot of the same feels of last year when we went into Buffalo and beat them. But I also like how you were saying they don't have the number one type receiver. We have the number one corner in the league, that is just continuing to show why he's an all-pro. And then now with our defense, the way that it is with how my cousin brought it up when Ron brought it up about the number of sacks per season, we are now going after the quarterback a lot more, and we're getting there and putting so much pressure. We didn't have that last year when we played them. This year we do. Like, if we can get to Josh, he's going to have a hard day. And again, like how you said, the only thing that does really concern me is the running game itself, because that's what we struggled a lot. But I'm just hoping that now that we have Riley Moss here coming back, that we're going to be able to help plug that in the middle, where it's not going to be as potent how when he wasn't there and when we lost to the Chargers and so forth. I think that was a big factor there in that game. But I feel like we're going to go in here, and I think we're going to win by 10 points into this game itself, because we're going to be able to get there, get Josh where he's out of his game, out of his rhythm, because he hasn't faced a defense like ours yet this year, I feel like. And if we can just stop, that's going to be the big thing right there. Cook, if we can stop him or limit to what he can do, we'll be fine.
Paul Schaefer saying, "Vámonos Broncos." Paul Schaefer, thank you so much for joining us and showing your support. And he also has a question for you. He's saying, "Bronco Libre, do you wear stretchy pants?"
Only in my bedroom. You know what? No, the funny thing that you say that is I've actually had a couple people at the tailgate saying, "Hey, you need to put the whole get up where you are wearing stretchy pants and all that." I've been thinking about it. It's like, is that something that I need to do for next year or not? But I have to reach out to those guys, because they said that they were going to hook it up with a person here in Denver that actually makes like boxing shorts and all that actually does it for the professional boxers and all that. And he does all the shorts and the stretchy pants and all that. And I'm like, something about really thinking about possibly doing that for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I so heartily agree. The boss jumping in saying, "What are each of your 3 keys to victory over Buffalo?" I think, actually, let me leave that up. I don't know about if I have 3, but I have 2. Maybe I'll work on a third one. But the first one, being the most obvious, is this defense has to show the world why they were brought to the dance. As you guys heard somebody else mention earlier, 63 sacks, most in the league. They need to bring the heat, because making Josh Allen uncomfortable is definitely the key. Now, with that also, it's a double-edged sword. If you're going to bring the heat, you cannot miss, because if you miss, Josh Allen will punish you with his legs. He can run. He's a very agile player, as well as throw. So if you're going to throw the kitchen sink, you better not miss. So that's definitely going to be one of the key points for victory. My second one is also on the defense, which is limiting James Cook. I think James Cook is probably their most dangerous weapon, because when Josh Allen doesn't need to throw, they can rely on James Cook to push the ball. Now, last year, they were really, really good in limiting James Cook. If you guys remember that very first drive, James Cook fumbled the ball and gave possession to the Broncos at the very start of that game. So that's exactly what the Broncos need to do. They need to keep James Cook from being that liability. They need to force Josh Allen to throw because the secondary is really good. And I think that not having Stephon Diggs in the playoffs is really going to hurt Buffalo's chances, especially against this defense. So hopefully that comes to fruition. And the third one, probably being the most important one, is the Broncos offense. They cannot get off the field by punting the ball because this is playoff football. Now, unfortunately, Bo Nix is still in his rookie stage, so he is more than likely going to make a mistake here and there. And in the postseason, those types of mistakes, turnovers, interceptions, fumbles, those hurt a whole lot more because this is win or go home. There isn't next week, go watch film. There isn't none of that. So we have to make sure that the rookie plays to the best of his abilities. Hopefully he limits his mistakes. We cannot have what we saw at the end of that overtime game in Cincinnati, like we talked about earlier, where, the catch is just right there, but it's incomplete, and that the Broncos have to punt the ball because the best way for Buffalo to beat this defense is to wear them the hell out. So time of possession is key. Libre?
My number one is going to be containing Josh Allen. For me, if you look at it, he's in contention right there for MVP. Even though I think Baltimore, he's going to get it, Lamar. But if you actually, when I was going back and I was actually listening to the DNVR podcast this morning, and when you talk about MVP status and Josh Allen being in there as the talks, go back and look at numbers. Look at the numbers. Bo Nix, him and Bo Nix are right there, back and forth, or just by a couple yards or a couple completions or whatever. They're right there. Who would have thought that a rookie quarterback would be there with Josh Allen, who's in MVP talks itself? And that's all what it should be, is about numbers, and he's right there. But if we can go and contain Josh Allen, we're just hitting him. Hit him to the ground. Get the QB pressures that are on there. Wear him out where he's going to make mistakes there in the fourth quarter, which if we can do that, I think that's going to be the main key right there. The second, of course, is stopping Cook. We need a limit to what he's going to do because he's just a beast. And if we can limit him, they really don't have much if we can do those two. And then for me as well, I think it's going to be our offense. I think Cortland Sutton and both Bo Nix are going to have a great day with a little Mims. And now that with Mims is now in there getting into the mix, it's going to be those three that are going to take us and get those points up on the board and take us to victory on that.
I so wholeheartedly agree with you. Your cousin Juan jumping back in saying, weather conditions, will it play a factor for either team? I hear it is supposed to have snow. Oh, and let's hope Von Miller is still a Bronco for life. LOL. I will say that if you follow him on Instagram like I do, that picture of him from Harlem Nights of showing his brother like kind of pulling the trigger on his form. Like it's just him, his way of saying, it's basically trash talk, okay? And it's very, and I was expecting it, especially from Vaughn, but hey, it goes both ways, man, because the same way that you pull the trigger on us is the same way that we could pull the trigger on you. So it's going to be a great battle. I will say, as much as I love Von Miller, this is not the same Von Miller of old. So
not at all.
But
even when he left, even when we traded him away, I think he was already tailing end of his career anyway. And this right now, I think for him is just any bonus time that he's been able to play. There's been a couple times where he's had a couple of good games here and there, but it's not consistent of when he was here, especially the 2015 season. And just like you said, he always is always on there saying Denver Broncos for life. He loves this team so much. He's just sad that we're happened to play him the very first round, but it's just that little banter. It's like, yep, I'm a Bronco for life, blah, blah, blah. But it's just something to get out there, to get to talking about the game, about now it's Von Miller versus the Broncos and so forth, or Broncos versus Von Miller for this game. But if you actually go look, especially this season, he's been really a non-factor. And I even think he got suspended earlier this year as well.
Yeah, I so hardly agree. And to answer the second part of your question, Juan, if it is a snow game, I think that hurts Buffalo even more, just for the simple fact that if it's snow, you take the run game away. So James Cook is not going to be at his 100%, and that pretty much puts the game at just as at a simple coin toss, because just as much as uh, uh, Josh Allen struggles throwing the ball, so will Bo Nix. It could come down to special teams. I mean, it could come down to who makes the most mistakes. I mean, with snow and the elements, it's a whole different ball game. We've seen the Broncos pull off a real close one when they played the Jets in that really ugly snowy game. So anything can happen, especially if Mother Nature decides to rear her head in, and it's really unpredictable to say, but hopefully we come out on top. And speaking of which, Broncos Breakdown, thank you so much for joining us and for your support, my friend. Saying, what's up, guys? Yes, winning season and playoffs seems like light years ago, right? That said, not sure we won't go one and done, but at least we made the playoffs. What do you guys think? Well, let me tell you something. And this has been pretty much said by everybody on Broncos Country since they won on Sunday. Even if the Broncos go out one and done, they broke so many expectations. They reached a ceiling that was nowhere thought to be of reach. So it is nothing to be ashamed of if they lose this Sunday to Buffalo. If they keep winning, they'll just continue to shatter expectation after expectation. So if I were these other teams, I'd be more worried about what the Broncos are leading into next year. Okay. I know that there's 14 teams right now that aren't worried about next year, but there's a bunch of others that are. That's why you see all these teams that are nitpicking at our coaching staff. And it's going to depend on Sean Payton to see if he can convince whoever's up for these interviews to say, hey, you can go and be big dog over there and try to turn, crap into not crap, or you can stay here and formulate a championship team and, ride the wave that is Bo Nix and Sean Payton era. Totally different conversation for another day. So, but this team has just done so many great things and they've been fantastic. Again, yes, they've had, some bad losses along the way. The worst one being the Baltimore one and the Kansas City just crap. But the fact that the Broncos are in the playoffs, again, this is just like when we beat Kansas City last year. That was our Super Bowl. This season has been our Super Bowl. So even when the Broncos last year didn't make the playoffs because they lost, it didn't feel like a huge, gigantic disappointment to the season. It's like, hey, we celebrated that win against Kansas City like we just won the Super Bowl, and we celebrated this playoff clinch just like as if they had won a Super Bowl. So I don't think that the Broncos can be down on themselves if they don't win this game, but they have every single person in orange and blue behind them, and they are ready to turn some heads and disappoint a lot of people who don't think that they can make it to the big game.
No, I agree with that 100%. Especially with the expectations coming into this season, and what the Broncos have been able to do and show up and show out. And, a lot of people have come back on X and all that, and they came in and said, you know what? I'm eating my words. I'm going to come on here and say, look, I'm eating my words. I thought Bo Nix was the worst decision to pick at number 12. Why would you do that? And then when he started winning the player of the week, like this is the second one that he just won, that was announced yesterday, or today was it announced? And then him winning all those rookie weeks itself. They're like, oh yeah, maybe this is a good decision. Look how well he's playing. And then him being able to break the rookie record for the number of touchdown passes as well, which that was a phenomenal play as well. I was there in the game. We're like, did that just really happen? But, just going back is like, with what we've done this year, who would have actually thought that could have happened? With all of the NFL, everyone, all the naysayers, that this was the worst team and we were going to have the number one pick overall and all that. It's to say, you know what? The way that I love that the Broncos they fought back every single week and so forth and said, hey, we are here. Come and try to take it away from us.
So wholeheartedly agree. D-Rock saying, best believe Mile High Country. I was going to say Century. Mile High Country, we won't go quietly into the night.
Not at all.
100%, my friend. I couldn't agree with that anymore. Paul Schaefer adding 100% Mims and special teams will be the key to success. I really do hope so. Marvin Mims has been on a tear these last 2 games. Broncos breakdown adding, we are playing on house money and other teams should be scared because we have nothing to lose. It should be open playbook. Agreed. D-Rock also jumping in and saying, before the season even started, they quote unquote counted us out. But Sean Payton said, F it, I'm all in.
Let's go.
I mean, these are all just great motivation boosters. But let's be honest here, guys. There is like the possibilities of the Broncos beating the Bills are high, or not high. I'm sorry. They're very low. And this is just from the fact that, as Libre stated, the MVP race is so hot and tied between, Allen and Lamar Jackson. And just for the simple fact that the Bills have destroyed almost every team in their wake this past season, except for the Rams and the Ravens, who beat them, and they got crushed down by the Ravens. But so did the Broncos. But ladies and gentlemen, even with all that said, let me just remind you that this is the playoffs. And in the playoffs, it does not matter what happened in the regular season. Even last year, I know we keep talking about Buffalo losing to the Broncos last season, and which is a fact. But just because it happened once doesn't mean it will happen again. It just means it can happen again. So the Broncos have to go in there with that mentality and not get high on themselves. Okay. They have to be able to go in there and tell themselves and make sure that they know that they can beat anybody that's put in front of them. And being the 7th seed, they're going to have to go on the road all the way. There are no more home games, unfortunately. So in order for them to make history and make some noise and turn heads, they have to go out there on the road to Buffalo, maybe Kansas City or whoever the next high seed. Yeah, they would play Kansas City if they
KC
win.
next. Yep.
Yeah, Kansas City next, which they almost won in. And then if they win that, then they'd have to go on the road in the AFC Championship game to whoever wins between the other AFC teams. And then if they make it to the Super Bowl, they have to go to New Orleans. So the only way they'll make it back home in a victory wise is if they come back home with the Lombardi. So the magic number is 4. The Broncos need 4 wins to make that happen. And they're probably going to be some of the 4 hardest wins that they'll have to have gotten all season long, because it is not going to be easy. And as we're getting ready to head into overtime here, Libre, I'll turn it over to you. With thinking without your orange and blue colored glasses on, if you were talking to somebody who's telling you everything I just told you about the facts that the Broncos are not going to beat the Bills, what would be your counterpoint to that?
That the Broncos not beating the Bills is that Josh Allen just really had a hell of a game. He's the true MVP and so forth. Seeing that, like, I could potentially see that he's going to be the one that made those great plays, made you pay for your mistakes, that you went out there, did some magical runs. Like, that's really what's going to end up needing to happen, I think, for the Bills to do that. But do I feel like that's going to happen? Honestly, me personally, and I've been saying this all day and all day yesterday with some of my coworkers, I really feel, and I have this full confidence, which is weird. I haven't had this type of confidence in so long for this team. But I feel like we're going to go in there and we're going to surprise them. I don't think they're ready for this Denver Broncos defense. They're not ready for this offense. Yeah, they have all the film from all year long, but I don't think they can truly understand what this team is capable of doing. Just like how they said, we're playing on house money right now. And I feel like there's nothing for us to really lose. It's more of Buffalo has so much more to lose in this game than we do.
Mm-hmm. I so wholeheartedly agree. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of regulation, which means it is time for us to go into overtime. Shout out to the boss, Johnny Baki, for that really cool transition. I told you guys he would deliver.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
So Libre and I would like to apologize to all you guys out there that have missed us the last 2 weeks. For those of you that are just joining us in terms of Broncos overtime, this is where we normally go over what our personal thoughts about every single game left on the schedule. But we were off for the holidays, so just remind us next year, week 17 and 18, and then we'll make it up to you somehow this year, December. But since we are in the playoffs, I thought it would be great if Libre and I would go over the games for the other playoff teams and give our personal thoughts about who is left in terms of who we think is going to win in their respective matchups. So, but there are 2 comments that we did miss before we continue. Paul Schaefer saying, I thought this pod was in Spanish. I will follow you guys now. You're thinking of Viva los Broncos, my friend, which is every Friday at 7 o'clock Central, 8 Eastern, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific.
You got it.
Yeah, I got it. So make sure you follow on YouTube, Orange and Blue and MHRT for all of the broadcasting times. Broncos breakdown saying, I know it's a long shot, but how cool would it be if Peyton's Broncos played in New Orleans for the Super Bowl? I mean, it's amazing. Ooh. It would be amazing.
You know what? We say that, yes, it is potentially a long shot, but it's realistic that it could happen. Like we always say, if you're in the dance, you have a chance. You're still playing in there. So it's up to you to make that decision and seeing if you can get into that next game. And it's very possible. Like they said, as long as you're in, you have a chance to win it all.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, my friend. Sorry, I'm looking up the playoff schedule. So let's start with the AFC. We have the Chargers versus the Texans. If you guys saw Week 18, the Chargers just pretty much stomped the Raiders in that game. It kind of looked like it would go either way, but then it didn't. So, and then the Chargers just kind of stomped. And the Texans, I got to be honest with you guys. I know we've talked about this before on the show, but there's just something about Houston. CJ Stroud has taken a giant leap backward in what he was last year. I mean, last year he looked like a world beater, and it looked like, he could do no wrong. And then this year he's just kind of like, he hasn't had a really big game where he did last year, where he was throwing like 4 or 5 touchdowns against really good teams. And, even though the Texans have improved, somewhat, especially when they went out and got Stephon Diggs, for when we really thought that the Texans were going to go out there and make some noise, they didn't. So it just, I don't know. I just don't trust Houston to take this. I'm unfortunately going to have to say the Chargers, just for the simple fact that Justin Herbert and John Harbaugh, I got to give him credit. I'll have to eat some crow because I thought that the Chargers were just going to be charging, and it was going to take time for John Harbaugh to turn the Chargers around. Jim, sorry.
Yeah. I know. I mix it up all the time too, both of them, and I always mix it up.
One of the Harbaughs, I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But let me correct myself. Jim Harbaugh has done a pretty good job turning that team around, going from no playoffs last year to playoff contention. So before I turn it over to you, Libre, Chargers, man, they'll probably get through that first round. Maybe might not even be close, if I'm being honest with you.
No, I feel like it'll definitely be a close game because it's in Houston. It's a road game. I know a lot of fans there in Houston as well that are diehards for the Texans. But I do also feel like the Chargers are just that much better than they are. And like how you're talking about with CJ Stroud, it's his sophomore slump. And also I feel it's like you're that really good your rookie season, and you have to know that all these defensive coordinators have now reviewed every single game that you played. They know your tendencies. They know what you're doing. So they're really smart on that as well. So like, wouldn't be surprised next year with Bo Nix himself, having a little slump from what he did this year because of the same scenario. But he did slip. He did go back a lot this year, and which was hard for them to see. And they just happened to be in the South, and they just won the South. Yeah, I'll go with the Chargers, and I say the Chargers win by a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, it really sucks for us as Broncos fans to pick them, but well, just ask us next week, and I'm pretty sure next week we're more likely not going to pick Los Angeles.
No.
Next game up is the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Baltimore Ravens at the Ravens. I got to tell you, I was really, really disappointed in that Steelers game last week, Libre. I really thought Pittsburgh should have won that, and they didn't. And I mean, I've seen Freiermuth catch way, way harder passes than that. And just for the simple fact that he didn't catch that ball was just, and I'm a Broncos fan, but for me, I thought that was kind of, not like him. And again, Russell Wilson, come on, man. Like, it's basic football 101. You throw the ball away, you stop the clock. You don't, especially if you know you're not going to get the yardage that you need. If he'd have gotten like the first down or something, or if he had more time, then yeah, I could make the argument for him. But you wasted so much time in, getting up and spotting the ball and not even spiking it, which made it even worse. So I don't really understand that logic. It sucks to see that regression in Russell Wilson. And I'm just saying that for me because I'm still a bit of a Russell Wilson fan, because I know how much money we're paying him to go out and play for Pittsburgh. And right now it's at the point where if they don't beat the Ravens and they get bounced out, I think that Russell Wilson more than likely doesn't see another year as a Steeler. I think that the Steelers would, and this is just an early prediction, that they'll stay with Justin Fields, and they'll, because Russell Wilson's only on $1 million contract. 90% of his money's coming from Denver. So I don't see him still being the Steeler, especially the starter, when he couldn't get them to a higher seeding during the second part of the season, and then just, losing to the Ravens, which would be even worse out of all the teams to lose in this playoff contention. So I'm going to unfortunately say that I think the Ravens get the best of them. They're going to have to need a miracle from Russell Wilson and a better game from him and Pickens if they want to beat the Ravens.
Okay. Definitely. So for me, I think a lot of that game on Saturday was that the Bengals were fighting to get for their lives to stay in for the playoff contention itself. Steelers already had it in there. They already clinched a spot. So with that being said, Russ is going to do Russ things, and he does it. You see it game in and game out. There's questionable plays that he does, and they're like, come on, Russ, we know the game. You've been doing this 12 years, 13 years now. Like, you got to be better than that. Like, and I think sometimes his ego takes over. He's like, he thinks he's so much better than what was when he was there with the Seahawks. So, but I agree that this weekend but again, it's a divisional game, so you never know. This is the third time that they're facing each other. So it can go either way, but I do feel like it's going to be a close game, but Baltimore will definitely win and come out ahead on this game itself.
Wholeheartedly agree with you, my friend. And now let's jump over to the NFC, folks, where we got the Packers facing off against the Philadelphia Eagles. I got to tell you, Libre, the Packers losing to the Bears this past week, I mean, they should have shellacked the Bears. And Christian Watson going down, Dr. Love just kind of looking like he's regressing, if I'm being honest with you. And it almost felt that aside from Josh Jacobs, like nothing the Packers were doing offensively was working. And that in itself could spell big, big trouble, because if you couldn't beat the Bears in a meaningless game to them in week 18 at home with your starters, aside from Christian Watson going down early, then what chance do you have going up against the Eagles, who are going to come in full throttle, I'm guessing, because they did give what's his name? Their starting quarterback. I can't think of his name right now.
Well, Jalen Hurts is
Jalen Hurts. Thank you.
Well, he's out. Well, the thing is, he's still out with a concussion.
Oh,
so,
is he?
Oh, yeah. So that's part of why he wasn't in there is because of the concussion. And I just actually saw that he's still like in the concussion protocol right now. So, so that's good. It's still that one's going to be interesting on that with that game itself. Hopefully, if he does come back, that's going to be the main key right there. The only reason why I know that is because I had Jalen Hurts as one of my quarterbacks in one of my leagues. So it's just something hard. Like, is he going to be available for this weekend or not? Especially for that game. But overall, like just for me personally, I do think the Eagles will win this game. Even if he wasn't in there, I think they'll still win this game because of how much firepower that they have, especially with Saquon. Like he's just gonna go out there and he just goes beast mode right now.
Yeah. And I was going to say that, I think the Eagles are going to win that game too, just for the simple fact that with Vic Fangio defenses, they somehow get better over time. It's kind of like a fine wine. So as long as he has his star players, I mean, that Eagles defensive front line is just vicious. So they're going to get to the quarterback. Green Bay is really going to have to fix whatever it is needs to be fixing. Because they cannot go into Philadelphia. It's going to be pretty much a rematch of what was in round one, and that game came pretty close to the wire with Jordan Love going down at the very end of it. But the Eagles won that game, right, in Brazil?
Yes, they did.
Okay, and that was just barely. So if we get a rematch of that, then this game could go either way. But then again, that was week one. And it was Vic Fangio's first time as a defensive coordinator for the Eagles, seeing out what the team looked like, outside of a preseason setup. And I don't know. I just don't think that the Packers can win that game. I'm sorry. Next one up here we have is the Commanders versus the Buccaneers, which is I feel is going to be a shootout at the OK Corral. Let me tell you. I mean, Jaden Daniels, I know you guys don't want to hear it in Broncos country, but the unfortunate truth is that Jaden Daniels is more than likely going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's not to take away anything from what Bo Nix did at the end of the Kansas City game in Week 18. But ladies and gentlemen, again, those were just backups and third stringers. Bo Nix was expected to have a field day, and he did. So, but unfortunately, he also had a couple of mistakes along the way. And I think that that's more likely going to be what's going to cost him the Offensive Rookie of the Year for him. But I don't think Bo Nix is even worried about that, to be honest with you. He's just trying to win a playoff game. So he has his sights set on taking this team as far as they can go, which I'm totally fine with. But back to the matchup, I think that the Buccaneers are going to be limited because they don't have Chris Godwin. Like they do have something nice in McMillan. But again, he's no Chris Godwin. And Mike Evans is, if you corner him enough, it's like what else can they do when your best wide receiver is covered? The good thing about Chris Godwin is he can be like Mike Evans when Mike Evans isn't there or if he's being double teamed. McMillan is still a rookie. This is his first time going into the playoffs. Although I will say that the Buccaneers have a very good running game with Bucky Irving. He's more likely going to be a star going forward in this league. But the Commanders' defense is still kind of, for Dan Quinn being a defensive coordinator, I think that the defense would have taken a huge step forward, and instead it was the offense that did. So they'd still need a couple of key pieces on that defense for them to be a lot more formidable. Unfortunately, I think that if it's a shootout, I think that the Bucs win it, but I think it's going to be close. I don't think it's going to be like a blowout by any means. And I'm only saying that because last year the Buccaneers blew the Eagles out of the water. So, and I think it's going to be like that the same, but I don't think it's going to be like a blowout from each side. I think it's going to be close. It could come down to a field goal, but I'm going to say the Buccaneers win that game.
For me, this is the game of the week to watch this weekend, because of how close that these two teams are. Like you said, I just heard something today, especially with Rookie of the Year and so forth. is that the NFL and the voters who have the votes on this technically look like the first month and a half of the season. And then that's basically when they decide basically who's the rookie of the year. And Bo Nix didn't have a great start to the season at all. And Jaden Daniels did. So part of it, yes. If you look at the numbers, and like I was mentioning earlier, if you go back and look at the numbers and see the number of touchdown passes, the number of receptions, everything else, like every statistical thing you can do, Bo Nix either has one or two better than Jaden Daniels, but it's because of those first couple of weeks of the season, which really made that decision and so forth. Which, go ahead, let him have it. And like you were saying, Bo Nix can care less about this. He just wants to go out there and let's win a playoff game. But going back to the game itself, with these two teams on how they are made up and how they're put together, yeah, it's going to be a high scoring game, I feel like. But I do think that with Baker Mayfield being more experienced within the league and so forth, that they're going to come out on top, and it'll be a close game. But I think that they'll win by at least a touchdown.
Agreed. I can agree to that. I'm going to say a field goal, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was by a touchdown or maybe even 10 points.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And the last game for the wild card weekend is the Vikings versus the Rams. I mean, that's going to be another good game too. Not as good as Bucks versus the Commanders.
Correct.
And the reason I say that to you, Libre, is because the Vikings had a big chance. They had a big chance to show up against the Lions, and they totally crapped the bed. They let Gibbs run all over them. I mean, the man had 3 touchdowns that game. And for a Brian Flores defense that has been really stiff, especially against the run, like that was really shocking. And Sam Darnold having just a really, really bad day at the office, not being able to find any of his wide receivers who he's normally good at. I think that hurts him contract wise, because let's face it, he's not going to be with the Vikings next year.
No.
I don't see it happening. A lot of people have already forgot that JJ McCarthy is waiting in the wings. So
exactly.
that's McCarthy's team. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Before he got hurt this season in preseason, that guy was having, just like Bo Nix was having, like he's got a cannon. He was throwing passes. He was going off, man. And God only knows what this league would have looked like with him in his rookie season if he hadn't gotten hurt. So unfortunately, the rookie season for JJ McCarthy is not going to start till next year. And now we're seeing that he's definitely going to be Sam Darnold's going to be a free agent. I don't see him playing, second fiddle to JJ McCarthy. I think that there's a job for him out there because he's shown that he is. However, I do think that coaching is very important in that aspect. That's why he's not with the Jets, his initial team that drafted him. So whatever team, and Carolina after that. So whatever team he goes to, it's got to be to a team that can, work with what he can do and not ask him to do more. Otherwise, you're going to get an experience that he had with the Jets and Carolina. But he did a really good job filling in this season as the starter for Minnesota. I don't really know what the hell they were thinking in Daniel Jones. I don't think Daniel Jones sticks around either. But then again, I could be wrong, especially seeing that Daniel Jones is literally being paid millions of dollars by the Giants for like another, 2 years, I think. So he's going to be with another team soon.
Well, they did that. Honestly, they bring in Danny Dimes as that insurance policy because you never know what could happen, especially here in the playoffs.
Oh,
yeah. So that's the main reason why he's on the practice squad right now, because at any given time, who knows what could happen, and if that's going to be the scenario, he's right there. They don't have to worry about trying to figure somebody else. He's now been in the facility. He's been going through somewhat practices and whatnot, and not getting all of the reps or any of the reps at all. But he's there. He's watching it, see it. Now he's reading the playbook. So it's really that insurance that they have. But I agree with you. Is he going to be with the team after the end of the season? Probably not.
Yeah. Well, they already waived off Brett Rippon to make room for Jones. So Brett Rippon's on the waiver wire. He's more than likely going to land with a team that's in the playoffs, I think, before maybe not the start of wildcard weekend, maybe the next one.
Next one, yeah.
But they've already made their bet. But going back to my pick, Los Angeles at home. I mean, the Rams have been one of those teams that they look like they don't know what they have because, they gave up all their picks and they're not in salary cap hell as much. And they don't look like a team that can make it that far. But you see Puka go out there and Cooper Kupp still has some juice left. And I can't think of the running back for Kyron Williams.
Yeah.
And when those guys get going, I mean, they can be a force. They beat Buffalo. They went out in a shootout with Buffalo. So, and it's the Brian Flores defense versus the Matt Stafford offense. And at home for Los Angeles, which, by the way, our hearts and prayers are with everybody out in California for those wildfires. Hope everyone's okay.
Yeah.
What's going out there in Cali. This game might also end up getting moved to Arizona if the wildfires do not get control and they continue to spread. But before I turn it over to you, Libre, I'm just going to go out and say that I think that the Matt Stafford Rams offense beats the Brian Flores defense, just for the simple fact of against what we saw against Detroit. That Ben Johnson offense has just been a buzzsaw all season long. And if the Vikings can't stop a Ben Johnson offense, then the Matt Stafford offense is kind of close to what's in Detroit because that's where he came from. So I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the Rams on that one.
I think this is our only disagreement because I feel the Vikings are going to come in and win this game. Part of it is that, yes, the Vikings and the Lions were going for the number one spot overall. And that Lions defense is no joke. And I thought it was going to be a lot closer than what it was there at the end of the game. But if you could see throughout that whole game, the Vikings was still moving the ball very, very well throughout that whole game until they got into the red zone when when Detroit's defense went in there and actually stopped them there in the red zone. Part of it is I had Justin Jefferson on my fantasy team, and I just needed a total of 10 points from him to win my championship league, to win it. And he didn't get it because that defense stopped him, and I think the Minnesota at that time when they were in there, they went to him way too many times as well. And Detroit was just all over it. But I feel like with that going forward, within this game itself, I don't think it's going to be the same type of scenario here. The defense isn't as good as Detroit's defense. And I feel like Minnesota has a lot more firepower on the offensive side and that they're going to go ahead and come out. And I think they're going to win by 2 scores, at least 2 scores with this game. Even though if it is in LA or if it's in Arizona, either way, wherever it might be, it's still, I think Minnesota will take care of this game.
Wow, our first disagreement. Man, our next week's episode is really going to be an I told you episode, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I told you Minnesota was going to win. I'm just foreseeing it.
I look forward to it, my friend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for our show today. But before we go and we say goodbye, there is something I want to share with you guys, and it's something I forgot to do at the beginning of the show, but you'll have to forgive me. I am officially an old man today. So if you guys haven't heard, there's a gentleman by the name of Mike Carmelini. And I don't know if you can see this because it's kind of spaced out, but let me see if I don't know how to zoom on this thing. But basically it says that he has chosen the Orange and Blue Network as the 16th best out of all top 20 podcasts in Broncos country. Orange and Blue Network has landed at 16. So
that's awesome.
That's really awesome to see. It's, congratulations are in order for Johnny Baki and Isaiah Henderson, the founders of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you guys hear me talk a lot about Johnny and Isaiah, but again, none of this is possible without him. I'm not here if it wasn't for Johnny. None of this you see here I would be here if it wasn't for Johnny. Not even Libre, who was reached out by Johnny before the start of the show and before Viva Los Broncos. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. So it started with 2 guys and a dream to just be out there and just talk football. And It's pretty much the same premise that I was on. So this is a really, really big honor from Mike. MHRT Network was also made it on the top 20. I think they were rated up a little bit higher than us, but also congratulations to MHRT for making the top 20 as well. But for us, it kind of feels like the little train that could. And, shout out to Mike for, even thinking about us and mentioning us. He mentioned the Viva Los Broncos being the only Spanish podcast show that I can think of. It probably available almost anywhere that's not affiliated directly with the Denver Broncos, I think. Don't quote me on that. But I have this picture hanging right on the other side of this computer monitor because it's my motivation. And let me just tell you that I never got in this to be the best, to be number one, because if you read, I suggest you guys go and follow Mike and read the top 10 on there. I mean, those guys are juggernauts. They have the firepower, the personality, the audio, everything that makes them super. I follow them and they're great for a reason. I'm not trying to compete with them. I'm just trying to be me and just come on here and talk football with you guys. But just the fact that we were being mentioned on this network by Mike is a really big honor. So shout out to Mike and shout out to all the other top 20 podcasts that made it on here. And for those that didn't make the cut, let me just tell you, keep going, keep pushing, keep doing what you're doing. And sure enough, Mike will find you one day.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. We got to have Mike on the show one of these days. I'm going to reach out to him and see if we can afford him. Because his stock and his time are really going up by the day, I swear.
That's awesome.
But make sure you follow him on there. He's got his podcast coming out really soon, and I can't wait to see it and hear it myself. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. I know, again, we do apologize for not being here the last 2 weeks, but again, the holidays, and, we love our families. But make sure you subscribe and share the Orange and Blue Network, comment and like on all of your favorite shows. Your support is greatly appreciated. Also, MHRT, please follow them, subscribe, share, comment, and like on all of their shows. Ladies and gentlemen, for any business inquiries, you can email at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. Audio listeners, please, we ask that you give us that 5-star, hit that live notification bell so you're always up to date on any new episodes that hit wherever it is you listen to on podcast, as well as any comments you leave on there. You can screenshot and send them to me at my Twitter, which is at a 6'10" Mexican, and Bronco Libre at Bronco Libre 5280. Please continue to support any and all forms of Broncos media out there, articles and other podcasts and stuff as well. They need your support just like we need yours. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, for Bronco Libre, I'm Adan Diaz, and this has been Broncos Talk on the Orange and Blue and MHRT networks. We are out of here. We will see you guys next week, fingers crossed, with a Broncos victory in tow and getting ready
to go
about the second matchup. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go Broncos! Woo!
Let's go! Woo!